Hey there, friends. Welcome to Montessori 101, a live show from Child of the Redwoods, all about the magic of Montessori. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. So whether you are live or you're watching the replay, we are just happy you are with us. And if you'd like to know more about our work, head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com.
Thank you. Well, we are here to talk about something fun. I'm going to give you a clue as to what it is. We're going to give you a little lesson about the
sandpaper letters. The sun.
It's the sun. I probably didn't put those together very well. I could have done that better on video. It's hard to hold things up.
It's all right.
Yes, we are going to talk about the sun.
Oh, I love the sun.
The word sun, I think, is actually particularly fun. You want to hold that?
Yeah.
Because it is a consonant vowel consonant word.
That's true.
It's a very, very short word. All of these letters, so it's a very easy English word. Mm-hmm. It's also a topic that's very interesting to children.
Yes.
And very present in their lives. And so I think it is one of the very first words we teach children.
Yeah.
In the scheme of teaching reading, after they learn a lot of the sounds, all they need to know is the sounds s, and n, and then they can blend them together to read the word sun.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to teaching children how to read with classic materials like the sandpaper letters and the movable alphabet, we also want to teach them how to read and understand language by teaching grammar.
That's right. This is actually something that's special about the Montessori curriculum, I think. Now, of course, anyone who went to grade school, grammar school, we call it grammar school sometime in the olden days, studied grammar, parts of speech, whatever. But what makes Montessori unique, I think, is that it teaches it at a very young age. In fact, even in the primary curriculum, which is for 2 to 5.5-ish, you're already introducing grammar concepts, which is much earlier than you typically find. And by the time they are in first, second, third grade, or what we would call the lower elementary curriculum, grammar becomes a really important part of it. And the other thing that makes grammar so, I think, interesting, or another thing, is that the Montessori approach to it really treats it less like a add-on to language arts, right? It's not just another part of reading and writing, which I think is how we often teach it. It's just sort of lumped in with English or whatever your language arts class is, but rather it's its own thing, and it's something more like geometry is to math. The grammar is to the reading and writing. It's related but distinct and has this beautiful kind of artistry to it. It's not just this I don't know. It's not just a dull subject of like, go around and take your red marker and underline all the nouns or something.
That is the way I remember being taught grammar in public school.
Yeah, that's right. Just like circle the nouns or circle the articles.
We were doing that all the way through middle school. I remember especially doing it in the 5th and 6th grades. Of course, that was back in the day of the purple Mimeo sheets.
Yes. The olden days.
Yes, to date one's age.
But of course, nowadays it would just have it as an app. And so it's not really substantively different, right? I mean, just because it was a mimeograph and now it might be on a computer screen, a lot of it is just really like go and circle a part of speech. And that's not very interesting.
No. And I mean, if you go and you just Google teaching parts of speech to kids, activities, downloadable, printables, you're going to find a ton of worksheets out there that are just like circle the nouns, and there's nothing wrong with circling nouns. I think it's actually a fun activity. I teach kids to do that all the time, but I usually like to use their real books I like to use a real book rather than just a worksheet.
Well, it's the same as with math. There's nothing wrong. In fact, it's really useful to do sets of problems, to sit and do lots of addition or multiplication. But the important thing to what we have to keep in mind is that that's not the you have to give the lesson first. You have to introduce the concept, and then they're going to use those problem sets or the circling of the nouns or whatever to apply that knowledge. But you don't want to start there. You want to start with something that's going to pop in the mind and really kind of synthesize that information in.
Yes. All right. So in Montessori, there are some really, really fun ways that we engage the child's whole body to help them to understand grammar in a way that's very playful. And as you said, can be introduced even in the primary years,
That's right.
even before children are actually fluent readers.
Yeah, and that's something I want to underline because I know we have a lot of folks in our community who have children who are, let's say, 3 or 4. We know I think the average member of our community has a 4-year-old, something like that. They have older and younger, but that's sort of the median.
We start at 2.
We do start at 2 and we go through 9, but 4 seems to be the magic number. And you might be thinking a grammar lesson, that's too, advanced. It's not. You are perfectly aligned to start introducing these concepts. It's a critical part of how we Montessorians approach the acquisition of language.
Yeah.
So let's jump into this.
Okay, let's jump
cool
into the
example.
lesson. So we are actually going to show you a lesson that is inside one of our themes because grammar is one of those subject areas that we weave in and out of our cultural themes in Constellation.
Yep.
So we're pulling a lesson from our thematic unit on sun, and it's for an important reason. Is because in Montessori, the verb, the action words are often symbolized as a sun.
That's right.
Or the sun.
Yeah, there's a metaphoric relationship to all of the symbols that we use for the grammar, right?
Mhm.
And we did a video on the grammar symbols before, and you can go check that out. They're amazing. We're going to touch on just a couple of them in this video. But yes, that metaphoric or that symbolic relationship between the part of speech, the symbol, and something like a concept like the sun is really powerful. Now, why would they have picked the sun?
They who?
Montessorians.
Well, the sun is an abundant source of energy. In fact, it is like the source of energy on our planet, the original source of energy that shines down, helps all our plants grow and helps us to live. And without the sun, we wouldn't even be here.
So that's it. This is a shirt. The sun, the verb of the solar system.
It is.
But it is, right? From the sun, all life emerges, right?
I mean, basically, yeah. Like,
yeah.
Humans have acknowledged the power of the sun and this, been grateful for the sun's energy for as long as I think we've ever existed. And even today, we know that if you are a human being that for some reason is deprived of sunlight
Totally.
for a period of time, whether it's because you live in the far north and like you just don't get enough hours of the day of sun exposure, or in situations where you might have to just completely not be exposed to sun at all. And I'm thinking this especially affects people who are in hospitals or, caregiving situations.
Or people who live in the far north or south where the sun.
Are homebound and just can't get out. That lack of sunlight, hopefully we know enough about like the benefits of exposure to sunlight that hopefully, more windows are open and people are brought out if they can, even if they are invalids. But I mean, it's that dramatic. Like it affects our health, and our sense of self and well-being. We are intimately connected to the sun, and the sun has so much energy. We almost, as humans, just cannot even conceive of the amount of power and energy, and the sheer size of the sun. This is something that we do talk about with children, especially in our elementary years, about how small we are compared to the earth and how small the earth is compared to the vastness of the sun. And in that relationship, the verb is, the category of words that we consider to be our action words.
That's right.
You can't really have a sentence without a verb.
No, you can't.
You really just can't.
I mean, I think you can have a sentence that's only a verb in English.
Right.
Run.
But technically you just can't. I mean, I can say David !
But it's not technically
but
it's not technically a sentence. It does
right?
not have a verb.
Technically it's not. Right.
That's
and
right.
so
There's an implied verb. David, get over here. David, what did you do now?
But really, like, without that verb, there is no sentence.
That's right.
And it's not true for any other parts of speech.
Nope.
You can have a sentence without a noun or an article or an adjective or a preposition. You cannot have a sentence without a verb.
Just like you can't have
Otherwise,
life on this earth without the sun.
It's just a noun phrase, or so yeah.
Yeah. So
it's appropriate that during a study of the sun, we bring up this beautiful Montessori concept.
All right, so I'm going to do I want to put a point on this. So the discussion we're having now is exactly the kind of way that you would want to start this lesson, even though we're not necessarily talking specifically about parts of speech. In fact, we're not really talking about the parts of speech at all. We're talking about the star that we call the sun and how big it is and how important it is. You would want to start your exploration of this verb game by centering the child around something that's really tangible to them. The warmth of the sun. What does the sun do? Why do we need the sun? The sorts of things that Aubrey and I are doing right now. Because maybe if you're listening in, maybe it's starting to hopefully plant seeds, so to speak, inside your own mind, like thinking about the sun and the metaphor of the sun. You're awakening this metaphoric concept. And now we're going to start to tie that metaphoric concept to something concrete in another world, which is grammar.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to show you the lesson itself. This lesson is called The Sun Shines, a Verb Game. Yep. It looks like this inside the Sun packet. And the Sun theme is actually available in our shop right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you like this lesson and you want the resources, then you can go to our Child of the Redwood shop and download it.
Yep.
Or you can join us in Constellation and you get a copy.
Yeah, it's just included in the library.
Yeah. All right. So let me give you a little guide to this lesson. And while I'm doing that, we'll kind of just go through the steps. All right. So the first paragraph starts with the discussion that we had just to orient you. It says, when Maria Montessori created the grammar symbols, she chose the bright red circle for the verb. And I have one here. You want to hold that up?
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is made out of wood.
Mm-hmm. All right. She was inspired by the sun, the most important star at the center of our universe. Just as Earth cannot survive without its sun, we cannot have a sentence without a verb. Verbs are so important, we can make a sentence with only a verb, but we cannot make a sentence without one. In this activity, we're going to have some fun, pretending to be the sun and exploring how verbs impact what we do. This says, if you're doing grammar work with your child, this activity typically comes after the experience that you have with nouns, which are represented by this black triangle, and also adjectives, which is represented by this dark blue triangle. And after or parallel to work with prepositions and conjunctions. And we'll talk about those another time. But so far, your child would have had experience with nouns.
Sun.
And with adjectives.
The.
No. That's for articles.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you need that? Okay, yes.
Although articles are also important and, we can include them.
Sorry. The. The sun.
And then adjectives. Big.
There we go.
Enormous. That makes me think of our current theme is giant right now.
That's right.
I've been going through all the synonyms for giant. So your child will be experimenting with grammar and sentence structure and enjoying some artistic expression as well.
Yep.
What do you need for this lesson? You need your Sun command cards, which David will show you, and then he will start cutting out. And you also need your grammar symbols, which we have shown you here. And also, I can also show you this little grammar box. Right? This is what a classic set of Montessori grammar symbols would look like in the classroom, or the 3D version, either one. But you don't have to have a wooden set. You can literally just draw them. It's so easy just to draw them with a colored pencil, or you can cut out a little, print and cut out a little set on paper. I think that the wood ones are nice because they give a nice introduction. But honestly, by the time your child is in elementary, they will find these kind of tedious to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's honestly easiest just to draw them at that stage. But when children are young, they definitely need these concrete materials. All right, so this says you're going to print your Sun command cards, which we did, and cut them out along the dotted lines, which David is doing right now. And then you need to secure yourself some art materials. You're either going to use watercolors or you're going to use markers or whatever you have that you would like to represent the sun with. Mm-hmm. Okay, because you're going to be doing an impressionistic painting or drawing. This is something that we do often in the elementary years, but it's perfectly appropriate in primary too. It's just a good teaching technique. All right, so that's the first page of the lesson. Second page is this. It's a little bit scripted language, and I'll kind of go through this with you so that you can hear what the lesson sounds like if you were just to read it. And most of our members don't read it straight through, although you totally could have this next to you and read it out loud to your child. It's perfectly acceptable to do that, even in Montessori lessons. There's no need for you to memorize an entire presentation or a lesson while you're doing it with your child at home. All right. If you were a Montessori teacher in a Montessori classroom, you were going to give this lesson over and over and over and over and over to children who are not your own, then yeah, it's part of Montessori training to memorize all of these lessons so that you know how to present them. And you can just do it automatically and not have to be thinking about the scripting. But most parents at home don't have that benefit of, taking a whole year or two of training and practicing, memorizing all these things. It's totally not necessary. So we script them for you in Constellation to kind of help you cut that corner. So I'm just going to read this to you. It says, this is how you give the lesson. You invite your child to play a game with you. You're going to place your command cards and your grammar symbols on the table. And David has done this right now. So here are our command cards. Right here, little slips of paper.
And what is the command card? It's a verb.
Oh, you'll find out. It is a command. All right, and then it says you're going to explain. Today, we're going to talk about a very special part of every sentence, the verb. The verb is so important in the sentence that it gets to tell everyone what to do. It's like the boss. It's also very strong. While a verb can make a sentence all by itself, there cannot be a sentence without a verb.
That's right.
Okay? And then you're going to share your impressionistic drawing with your child, which you would have done ahead of time. And I'm going to pull one that we use in elementary that I've already watercolored. Here's my little image of the sun. All right, so very, very simple. And this is actually, those of you in the lower elementary program will recognize that this is actually an impressionistic chart about how tiny the earth is and how big the sun is. Mm-hmm. All right, so you can use, if you have already made them for elementary, or if you haven't made them, maybe you purchased them, you can use the one from elementary, or you can do one just by yourself. And it doesn't take any time at all. You're literally just going to swirl around some red watercolor on a piece of paper, call it the sun, and have that as your impressionistic chart. And what you're doing is making an impression in your child's mind of the image of the sun. Yep. You could also use a picture of the sun, or a picture of the sun up in the sky in a beautiful setting, or the sun's rays, coming down onto your local park. You're just making an impression on the child. You're going to say, we've been talking about the sun and how important it is to life on planet Earth. It keeps us warm. It gives energy and nutrients to all of the plants and animals. It helps determine our seasons, and we even base our calendar around it. We can imagine that verbs look like the sun, big, round, important, and impacting all living things. And then you're going to pick up the grammar symbol for the verb, which is the large red circle, and you will compare it to your drawing. Okay? Ooh, that looks fun, doesn't it? Here's our sun drawing, and here's the grammar symbol for the verb. And then you're going to invite your child to play. Today, we are going to be the sun. And these cards here that you have on your workspace in front of you, probably a rug, these cards each tell us something that the sun does. And we are going to act them out.
Oh boy.
So if your child would like to, at this point, this is when you get to play dress up. So you go and find something that is red or yellow or orange that you would like to use to help you to become the sun. So do we have anything in here that we can... What do we find? All right, a red sheet. So please put on your red sheet. Aw. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay.
I feel sunny.
Do you? Okay. All right, so now you are in costume.
Yes.
And you're very, very excited. So now we're going to pick up the card that says the sun. So I'm going to pick it up right here. All right. And here it is, the sun. We'll place this right here on our workspace. And then you're going to pick one of these words, these command cards in the stack. So just pick one. Rises. And if your child is not reading, you're just reading it out loud to them. The sun rises. All right. And then you're going to put these words together. Let's see if I can do it for you on the video. The sun rises. Are you ready?
I am.
Rise.
Burn, burn, burn.
Okay. Let's pick another one. Let's see.
Ooh,
Dazzles. The sun dazzles. Can you do some dazzling? All right, that's one way.
How are you doing?
I was thinking like twinkling.
Twinkly, twinkly.
All right. This says that you can ask your child questions to help guide them through this work. So you might ask them, like, which word told you what to pretend to be? So it could be like the sun is the noun, told you to be, this sun here.
Yeah, article.
And you can ask which word told you if you were any sun or a specific sun. And the answer, if your child had studied articles, they would know it's the word the, because that means something that is specific. All right. And then you might ask your child, which word told you what to do? And it, of course, is the verb, right? Which is symbolized, which we could place right over this word.
Yeah, to make a concrete relationship. You notice that for the versions that we're providing here have a red outline to go with the red,
right?
To sort of go with it. Obviously, there's a near infinite number of verbs. And so that actually kind of gets to the next sort of, as we're looking further, as they're thinking about those verbs, or as you're making your own set, there's no limit to what the sun might do.
Yeah. So after your child kind of has an experience with pretending to be these things, you could play charades as well. Or you could just jump right to charades with your older children, if you're all right. So I'm going to just do one just for fun.
Okay.
And you don't know which one it's going to be, so don't look. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
Is it hot? Warm, hot, burning, burning, fiery, burning,
Burns.
burns. Oh yes, the sun
The
burns.
sun burns. So these, you can see like even David and I are genuinely having fun with these, mostly as he's amusing me. But with a child, like, it doesn't really matter if all of their verbs look the same,
No.
whether they're radiating or glowing or rising. It could all look like twirling around in the middle of the room. But the point is you are embodying
Mhm.
the symbol of the verb, and
right.
yeah, you are embodying it. You are feeling what it feels like to be a verb, which I think a lot of people forget, is kind of the whole point.
Right. We invented language in order to communicate, and we later decided to call certain parts of it by certain names. A verb is the doing part of it.
Mhm.
But, language, we created language in order to convey meaning. And so when we abstract it too far and it becomes just like sets. Oh, okay. Let's circle all the verbs. So sets is a verb in this case. Then it becomes very boring, I think, and abstract from what the real purpose of language is, which is to communicate something meaningful. And in this case, that meaningful thing is an action. It is setting, and to have fun with it.
Yeah, and this is also appropriate for children of any age.
Totally.
Do you want to talk about the everyone can play section?
Yes.
Every single lesson in Constellation has an everyone can play.
So if you have a toddler, someone who maybe a little one who's not quite ready for the command cards and the reading, you just skip the symbols. You don't need to introduce them. I mean, you won't hurt the child. It just will go over their head probably.
Or you can just show them the impressionistic chart, but you don't need to go into
the child
symbols,
is like the cup that will take the information they can. So it won't hurt the child, but I wouldn't suggest focusing on it. I would also skip the command cards. Instead, what you want to do is just pretend to be the sun and talk about what the sun does.
Mhm.
So you're giving them, this might be where you use that impressionistic chart, and you're giving a general lesson about the sun and having them act out. And so they are acting the verbs. Then if they are a little older, let's say an older primary child, so we would say maybe 3, 4, 5, it's a great game to play verbally. Older primary children may enjoy the impressionistic story and practice with the symbols. So I can think that charades game might be. What do you think? Would be a real hit. I can imagine them wanting to just over and over again act out the different verbs.
Yes.
Like that is a very fun thing to do. And you're connecting the dots there. And then for that older child, what we would call the lower elementary, which is 6 to 9-ish, they may enjoy adding their own creative verbs. It's also a great time to talk about the word sun is capitalized or in lowercase. So why is it sometimes uppercase S versus lowercase s? And
in ours, it's uppercase.
Yes, that's right.
Because we're talking about
the sun.
The sun.
Yeah, it's a proper noun.
And
then this is where I said, we in the set that we provide here, it's maybe a dozen or 15 verbs, but the sky's the limit. The sun could do all sorts of things beyond what it is here, and they could even be very, very silly. The sun smiles. Of course, the sun can't actually literally smile, but poetically, sure, it smiles on the earth, and the flowers soak up the rays. And so an older child can start to have a lot of fun playing with the language and the metaphor of language, and then understanding that even when we're speaking kind of poetically or metaphorically, there's still verbs or nouns and articles and verbs. So that's where you would take it with that older child. And then I think extending it even further, if they were interested in the sun itself as a body, like this would be a really fun way to sort of then thematically tie that into what are the parts of the sun, or how close have we gotten to the surface of the sun, and do we actually know what's inside, and how does it really work? And so all of those kind of explorations can bear fruit as a kind of start from this initial lesson on verbs.
Yeah. We believe strongly that the best way to teach children really any lesson is in context. With something of interest that
Yeah, that's right.
they can apply it to. And so it doesn't mean that you don't give other grammar lessons,
Nope.
but it does mean that if you are doing this work while in the middle of a study about the sun, this grammar lesson is going to hit a lot more impactfully.
That's
you
right.
know,
So that's the idea of the thematic learning.
it is. And that's why we incorporate grammar lessons into these themes. A lot of our members will ask, like, am I supposed to go through these in a specific order? You can, but those are just basic Montessori lessons that can be given in the sequence.
Yep.
But they're going to have more impact if it's meaningful. And it's also a benefit if you've already introduced, the verb to your child. And maybe this isn't their very first experience with the verb. That's totally fine. Now you are taking that little bit of knowledge that they had with their first experience and you are applying it to something that you are learning about together.
That's right. And I think it's a good time to underscore what you just said, because we do get that question about order. And because a lot of curriculum or learning or education feels very sequential, we expect everything to be. But the truth is that in Montessori, and honestly in most education, if it's done well, there isn't a whole lot of sequence. There is some very significantly, like for example, in the reading curriculum,
there's developmental sequence.
There's developmental sequence, but beyond like development of planes or so forth, they don't have to study the sun before they study the moon. Right? There's no sequence there that's necessary. It's whatever captivates the child.
I would also say you don't necessarily, like, it's in the context of this lesson specifically. If you have already introduced the noun and the article so that you can put those symbols above these and talk about them, great. But there is absolutely nothing about this lesson that says that the verb couldn't be the very first grammar lesson that you teach.
Yeah, this one says kisses. This one says dances, and these are verbs, right? And the verb is shaped like the sun, and so if they haven't grasped or they haven't been introduced to the others, but you like this idea of the charade game, or you like the idea of playing with it, introducing the verbs, or just talking about the sun and what the sun does and how the doing thing is a verb, that's great. You can start with that. It doesn't break anything to begin there. It just is enhancing when they have those other pieces, and you'll bring them back in once they do start to learn about nouns and articles and adjectives and so forth. You'll start to pull all those together, and then it'll have these aha moments. But there's nothing that says you can't start with a verb.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is where we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about the work we do or check out this beautiful thematic packet on sun, you can go to childoftheredwoods.com. You'll also be able to chat with us in real time. If our chat feature is on, we turn it off when we're sleeping or when we're but it's worth checking to our website. If you have a quick question for us, often we can just answer on the fly. You can also email us at
Child of the Redwoods.
Hello
at childoftheredwoods.com. So I was thinking of our website, childoftheredwoods.com, but yes, you can email us at hello@childoftheredwoods.com.
All right. Thanks, friends.
Take care. See you soon.